It's so fitting to be doing this here at the Ethical Culture Society, celebrating its 150th year this year, which has so often been a central place for organizing on the most critical issues, on anti-slavery and on suffrage and on freedom and democracy. And you really are carrying that tradition on. Upper West Side Action Group, so many people in this room, at an absolutely urgent moment. You know, I think many of us find ourselves just so distressed and surprised to be at this time of such peril for our democracy. I personally would not have expected, even for all the problems that we know, for as expensive as the city is, for all the ways that our democracy is not as strong as we want it, for our failures to really make it work for everyone, given all of that. Like, these are perilous times, and what is critical to do in perilous times is not to doom scroll, is not to chew on your knuckles, is not to fret. It's to get out there and organize, grounded in values for the things you love, with your neighbors in hopeful, energetic spaces. And that's the tradition you're doing here, Arlene, and I just feel so grateful to be a part of it. So, that did make it a real delight for me to win the endorsement of this group. I have to say, it was one of the ones I really treasured. There are a lot of political clubs and organizations out there, many of them excellent, but not that many that are so committed to being in action, grounded in those deeply New York values, fighting for inclusive multiracial democracy, and then just getting out there and doing it with neighbors. You know, I feel like there's some wonderful activist groups, you know, they maybe have an issue that is, you know, super. There's political clubs that, you know, support candidates, do the and of course there's groups that organize neighbors, but to have something that so kind of deeply combines all three of those things, it really is very special. So I was thrilled to win the support of this club, and obviously, as Arlene said, you know, during the primary, you know, I was putting myself out there, you know, excited for the opportunity to introduce myself to New Yorkers and make my case. And as it came down the stretch drive, you know, I had been saying for many months, honestly starting a year ago when I threw my hat in the ring, that we would have to learn the lessons of 2021 and be very disciplined and strategic in ranked choice voting, because in 2021, if many of us supported, you know, a lot of people who voted for me for controller supported either Maya Wiley or Catherine Garcia in the mayor's race, and if Maya Wiley and Catherine Garcia had cross-endorsed each other a few weeks out from the mayor's race, I think in all likelihood one of them would have been mayor. We wouldn't have had this whole bizarre, corrupt 4 years with selling out to Trump and Turkey, and anyway, I won't go into all of that because we're almost done with it. But what I've been saying all along for the better part of the year is, look, I'm committed to making sure that we take a disciplined ranked choice approach. And of course, all of the candidates in the race, including myself, hope to be the one that would sort of be in the best position to win and benefit from that ranked choice endorsement of other candidates. But as the race was moving into its final weeks, it became very clear to people watching the race, watching the polling, that the two candidates who had a chance to win that primary were Zohran and Andrew Cuomo. And so, I had a kind of a choice to make heading down the stretch drive. And I have to say, it really, for me, was not a close call, and I'm delighted to be here tonight to tell you a little bit of my thinking, but mostly why I am thrilled, post the primary, to be a strong supporter of Zohran Mamdani for mayor, and why I hope everyone here will join me, not just in voting for him, but in really organizing and getting out the word and talking to people. And Arlene said to me that there were, a good set of people in the room who were strong supporters of his. I'm sure there's some people in the room who ranked him first in the primary. That is great. I'm imagining there's some people in the room who, ranked me first, but Zohran second in the primary. But she also said there probably will be some people in the room still asking questions, thinking, wanting to learn more, wanting to know more. And I want to make some room. I should just be clear. I'm representing myself. I'm not here as an official representative of the campaign, though I'm certainly a strong ally and supporter. So what I plan to do is this. Tell you, one, why I'm so excited about Zohran's campaign, think he's going to be a great mayor, support the vision that he has, which you've heard a lot about because he's such a fantastic communicator. But I'll tell you kind of my version, why that affordability agenda, why making this a city all New Yorkers can afford matters so much. Second, though you probably don't need it, I do think it bears saying, especially in this bonkers last week we've had, why the other candidates, and in particular Andrew Cuomo, are completely unacceptable choices for mayor, and why, especially at this moment with Donald Trump declaring war on America's cities, this is such an important time to rally together behind Zohran as the Democratic nominee for mayor. And then maybe I know there's going to be some questions, so I'm happy mostly to do this in questions, but I'll talk about a couple of the concerns that I know people have expressed, and why I feel confident that he is going to be a great mayor in light of them. And I'll try to just do all that in about 10 minutes, so we can leave a lot of time for your questions. Maybe, honestly, the concerns I'll let people ask me, but I don't want to make it uncomfortable, so I'll open up there. Okay. So first, it really is true that this is an incredible city that we're so blessed and lucky to live in it, to raise our families here, to benefit from these generations of brilliant, creative, hard-fighting, hard-working New Yorkers hungry for more opportunity and equality, greatest immigrant city world has ever known, place where people from all around the world create all this extraordinary value, and that the biggest threat to that right now, holding Donald Trump aside for 1 minute, is the affordability crisis. That if young people can't afford to stay here, to live here, to raise families, if it becomes just a playground for the wealthy, if people don't believe that they'll be able to ever have housing stability, afford to raise their kids, live in this city, it can't keep being the New York that we love. And people know that. We feel it in our bones. What Zohran did and is doing is running a campaign just so deeply committed to that basic idea of a New York that everyone can afford, and keeping the strong focus there. And that's what we've got to do in the campaign, and it's what we're going to have to do the next 4 years, the next 8 years. These are not short-term problems. It is critical to focus on them. And so making those big 3 commitments of freezing the rent and focusing on housing affordability, making buses fast and free, and expanding universal child care really just speak to people's needs. And I've been talking to New Yorkers all through my time in the council and in the controller's office, and that is really what I hear. Housing is usually like first, second, third, and maybe fourth. Child care really strongly up the list, obviously, especially for young families, and then other public services like transportation, just so critical. And the proposals that he is making to do something about them are realistic and credible. A rent freeze is something that Bill de Blasio did 3 times in the 8 years that he was mayor. Eric Adams, on the other hand, in his 4 years, has raised rents for the 1/3 of New Yorkers who are rent-stabilized tenants by 9%, despite the fact that every year we went down there and fought and said the increases don't need to be this big. So as a result of basically Eric Adams doing the bidding of the real estate industry, rents have been over-increased over the last 4 years beyond what they need to be, and freezing the rents for rent-stabilized New Yorkers will make it possible for people to breathe a little bit. Obviously that's for people who are already in rent-stabilized housing, but rent-stabilized housing is more likely to be working and middle-class New Yorkers for whom every push makes it harder to stay there. And he's got plans as well to focus on those parts of the rent-stabilized housing stock that need some extra investment and are facing distress. For the 1/3 of New Yorkers, actually, let me just do this just for fun. How many people in this room are rent-stabilized tenants? All right, that's about a third, actually. How many are rental tenants who are not rent-stabilized, renters but not in stabilized units? A little less, maybe a quarter. And how many homeowners? Okay. Okay. Well, how many Mitchell-Lama tenants? All right. I forgot I'm on the Upper West Side. Well, all right. Mitchell-Lama co-ops. Mitchell-Lama rentals. Okay. And I will say a word about the Mitchell-Lama co-ops. But look, so there's a plan to freeze the rent for rent-stabilized New Yorkers. For renters who aren't stabilized, there's a great new law that Zohran and others have helped pass in Albany called good cause eviction protections, which provide protections, but most people who are renters and in non-rent stabilized buildings don't even know they have those rights. And one of the things he's proposed to do is make sure there's a big education campaign so tenants in non-rent stabilized buildings who won't get the rent freeze get a lot more information about their rights under good cause eviction protections, which can help keep them in their homes and rent stabilized. And witnessing the Mitchell-Lama co-ops here, he has a commitment to build a significant amount of new housing that's built either by, on the model of Mitchell-Lama, like genuinely affordable, public developers, stays affordable for the long term. So that's going to be all hands on deck. Housing is just absolutely critical. It's the right first place to focus. Childcare, we know so much what New York City can already do because we have the example of universal pre-K, which has been one of the biggest successes in public policy in recent decades anywhere in the United States, and has made just such a profound difference for working New York families. I know myself, my kids benefited from it, and when I talk to families, they're like, okay, I'm struggling to stay here, the housing's getting more and more expensive, but at least I know, if I were in the suburbs or someplace else, I'd have to pay again for childcare when each of those kids is 4. Couldn't we do that when they're 3? Couldn't we do that when we're 2? Now, that is going to take getting new resources from the state. It was a big expansion of state resources that Bill de Blasio won against the objections and over the fighting of Andrew Cuomo to get the money necessary for universal pre-K. We're going to have to keep the organizing going. This is like classic Upper West Side Action Group. Fight for it to win this election in November, and then carry that forward to keep advocating and organizing in Albany next spring and saying to the legislature and to Governor Hochul, what a great opportunity to bring in some additional revenue to provide free childcare so that every 3-year-old and hopefully every 2-year-old, and let's keep going after that, could have free, high-quality childcare. That would make such an enormous difference to so many families. And I know we got a lot of buses, it's the Upper West Side, so I know a lot of people take the Crosstown bus and the buses here in Manhattan. So you know how insanely slow they are. We actually just put out a report from my office last week. 56% of New York's 332 bus lines got either a D or an F. Only 8% got an A or a B. The average Manhattan bus speed is about 6 miles an hour. So there's just so much work to do. Eric Adams, unfortunately, has fought against dedicated bus lanes and transit signal priority. And we need a better partnership with the MTA and Department of Transportation. They've now installed Omni readers in the back of every bus, but they're still not letting us do all-door boarding to get on and off the buses quickly. So fast, free buses, a huge benefit. Making them free will, again, take some additional resources from Albany. Making them fast is a thing that the mayor has a lot of control over because the streets belong to the city. So those are the 3 core commitments. And it's not just that they're, powerful, good ideas that the city can do. It's that they really help speak to this idea of an affordable city, of using the tools of government in this ambitious, optimistic direction. I'm happy to talk more about them in response to questions or some other elements of the campaign, but I really do believe that is the right agenda at this time. Overlaps a lot with the things that I was running on in the primary, and I feel really enthusiastic about them. So that's kind of the core, Zohran's commitment to a city all New Yorkers can afford. I don't think I need to spend too long on why Andrew Cuomo should not be the mayor of New York City. I really don't. If you want to hear it, I love to do it. It's funny. I'm a pretty nice guy. I'm just not the campaign really did bring out my killer instinct. I found myself cursing in Yiddish in him. On the night of the second debate, at the first debate, he had attacked my wife and just Twitter-sourced lies. But before that second debate, I did a little breathing, a little meditation to get ready. And I'm headed into the debate, and my son sees me, and he's like, "Dad, no. This is not the time for that meditation. This guy attacked Mom. You get out there and throw some punches." So I did that. I really do, at one level, just basic trust and integrity, this is a serial sexual harasser who sent seniors to their deaths in nursing homes and then lied about it to their families for years. That's not the kind of person that we should put in trust of our city. Someone who's just always in it for himself and willing to lie to kind of roll over anyone. But even given all of that, I still would not have expected that we were in a timeline where he would be in the Hamptons speaking happily about how his plan is for Donald Trump to clear the field for him to be mayor. But that really happened. You can hear the tape of him saying, yes, Trump doesn't want Zohran, and so he's going to get Adams out and get Sliwa out and make it so that I'm the mayor. And we are in a timeline, as you know, of rapidly creeping fascism with Donald Trump sending troops into American cities, taking away Medicaid and food stamps, on and on and on. And the idea that a person who once upon a time called himself a Democrat would be happy to have that authoritarian president trying to make him mayor. It's just beyond the pale, by itself, aside from everything else, aside from the sexual harassment, aside from the COVID deaths, aside from the megalomania, that by itself should be disqualifying. And I do think every Democratic leader now should say so, should step up, should endorse Zohran, and should join this effort. Last week that just a dear friend and another supporter of mine from the primary, and someone I think was really aligned with this group, even though she's Upper East Side, New York State Senator Liz Krueger, really one of the champions of New York values, of liberal politics, of good government, whose support I was proud to have in the primary, and who does not agree with Zohran on every single issue, chose last week to be very clear and say, look, there's a lot we agree on. Here's the things I'm really excited about. There's some things we disagree on, but boy, with Donald Trump trying to organize for Andrew Cuomo's mayoralty and offering Eric Adams who knows what, this is the time for Democrats to get off the fence if they've had questions and get on the field for Zohran. And I thought that was a big deal when Senator Krueger did that last week. And I'll just say finally one word about, and again, I want to invite people, if you have questions, if you have concerns, you ask me, I'll do my best. One thing that I actually think is great about Zohran is how accessible he has made himself, talking to people, being honest about areas of disagreement. That's New York City. He loves quoting that Ed Koch line, if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, I hope you'll vote for me. If you agree on 12 out of 12 issues, you should probably see a psychiatrist. That's an old Ed Koch line. And he's really good about those places where there's agreement and disagreement. I certainly welcome people doing the same. Certainly one of the things that Senator Kruger, spoke about having questions and concerns about is around issues that matter a lot to Jewish New Yorkers like Senator Kruger and myself and Congressman Nadler and Assemblymember Michael Lasher, all four of us just proud Jewish New Yorkers who love this city, all four of us now who are supporting Zohran, all four of us in that case who believe in still the vision of a Jewish and democratic Israel, very different than the one Netanyahu is running for sure, and a different point of view in some ways on that issue than Zohran has, but all four of whom are proudly supporting him. And I guess I'll say a couple of things there. One, I just have every confidence that he will, as mayor, keep Jewish New Yorkers, like all New Yorkers, safe. So that, if there's a synagogue that is concerned and wants to be able to get an NYPD car, they'll be able to do that. That he cares about Muslim New Yorkers, Christian New Yorkers, and Sikh New Yorkers, and Jewish New Yorkers, and will keep New Yorkers safe regardless of their political point of view or their religion or anything else. Like, there's just no, I feel deeply confident about that. On issues, so he's been very clear about his point of view on international human rights law. And I mean, we're not here to talk tonight about the horrors that are taking place in Gaza, where we are witnessing a mass starvation caused by the Israeli government, just a massive international human rights violation. He cares about those issues, he's gonna speak up about them. But people who disagree with him on that issue will be welcome in his administration. He's not gonna have like a litmus test for the Department of Transportation Commissioner or anything. It's going to be a diverse administration, as diverse as New York City, including ideologically diverse, and that is how it should be. City Hall is not the place where foreign policy is set. We're New Yorkers, we disagree with each other on things, but there are these foundational questions. Do you really believe in and have everybody's back? Do you want to welcome and include people, especially at this moment with Trump demonizing immigrants and really looking to shred our inclusive multiracial democracy? Can you count on people to stand up for each other? And I'm just telling you, like, as the highest ranking Jewish elected official in New York City for another few months, I feel every confidence that having an immigrant, Muslim, democratic socialist, mayor named Zohran Mamdani, we will have someone who has our backs, who wants to build a city, not just that every New Yorker can afford, but where everyone feels safe and welcome. And I find that really inspiring. And with that, I'll be glad to take your questions, but Arlene's going to choose the questioners.
So, let's see, Annie over there, so, yeah.
There we go. Thank you so much. So my concern has...
Go ahead and introduce yourself if you don't mind, just don't be name.
Annie Forsheimer.
I know who you are.
Proud friend of Arlene's and member of this group. His age, his relative lack of experience is really, for me, front and center. First of all, it would be really wonderful if he had a very trusted advisor at a very senior rank. Someone that we have trusted with the city's money and who knows how to manage people. I'm just saying. But it's that. I mean, it's really, personally, having worked in the federal government for years, and management of money, but management of people who are managing money is not something you necessarily can just do. So what kind of advisors are around him, all kidding aside, and what kind of manager is he?
Yeah. Look, I think this is an important question. No one would be ready to run the entity, which is New York City, right? I just, so I mean, I got a good management track record, but I run an agency that has 700 people, and New York has 300,000 people. Like no one is. So it really is all about what kind of team will you build, right? Like there's no mayor who knows how to fight fires. You need a really good, fire department commissioner, and on and on. So I think that is the right question to ask. He has cited some of his, the senior advisors and people that he's been talking to, and I think in general, they are people with exactly that kind of experience, So, that includes the people that he cited are Steve Banks, who was a deputy mayor and kind of great, legal services lawyer. Patrick Gaspard, who runs the Center for American Progress, was President Obama's political director and ambassador to South Africa. Maria Torres Springer, who was first deputy mayor and deputy mayor for housing and economic development in both across the Bloomberg and de Blasio administrations. Folks like Jean Foulahan, who was like state budget director and then city budget director and then first deputy mayor. What I can say for sure is like that set of people and the others that he has talked about are vastly superior to the senior advisors that Eric Adams surrounds himself or that Andrew Cuomo surrounds himself with. They're people of integrity, they're people who know how to manage. And then, again, it's not a direct correlation from running a campaign to running a city. There's no doubt they are different. But I do think it is just fair to observe that, to have gone from a campaign that had, no one had ever heard of to something that not only was the fastest ever to raise the resources, but spent them in a disciplined way, got about 50,000 people out volunteering and knocking doors, all on a very modest budget, in a way that was really well coordinated and disciplined and organized. Again, that still doesn't mean you know how to fight fires, or make the buses run, but it does speak to building well-aligned, well-organized teams with a lot of discipline and integrity. So I do think it's fair, and I'll maybe say it in a more general way, back to the campaign. I have certainly heard from people, we'd love to learn a little more before Election Day about, some of these questions around either management style or structure or personnel, and that could be done in a number of different ways. I think that's certainly a fair thing to say. The general election campaign is really only just gets started. We have the summer, and then it's Labor Day, and then there's this 2-month sprint, and you learn more about candidates in the course of a general election, and I think, that's a useful thing to bring.
So I'm going to just ask a quick question, what are your, is there a likelihood that you will be in the administration as we heard?
Just in all honesty, it is too soon to say. I have said publicly that, I will be very happy to find a way to help Zohran succeed, and, whether that's on the inside or on the outside, TBD. So I won't make any news here tonight. He's being deliberate in how he is thinking about transition. I guess one more thing I'll say here, this was, reported as well, but his longtime chief of staff in the assembly, who's interestingly someone he didn't know before he ran. I was interested in learning this. Her name is Elle Biscard Church. She, after he won his assembly seat, he ran an open process to try to get introduced to and meet new people. And I think she told me she had 4 interviews. You have a smaller staff as an assembly member, obviously, than the city of New York, but went through a very rigorous interview process. That has been a dynamite relationship. But, most assembly members, I think, go through board chiefs of staff, and he's had one for the 6 years that he's been there. She moved over to run the campaign in the primary, and she has now moved over to run the transition operation, and they are, gearing up to be talking to lots of people and getting to work with both that first rung of obviously the most senior level staff that you want to know about in an administration, the school's chancellor and budget director and police commissioner and deputy mayors. But then you very quickly have this large effort, which I feel so excited by. I guess I'll just make one more, I'll pause one more beat here, because with Donald Trump wrecking the federal government, right? Like shredding it, denying their labor rights, laying people off, eliminating the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, savaging the Environmental Protection Agency, on and on. There's such a powerful opportunity for a counterexample here to have New York City. Think about, we have this amazing, New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene has this amazing history. It's one of these historic agencies. They help invent clean water, and at this moment when we have that anti-health nut job running the federal, Department of Health and Human Services, what an amazing opportunity for the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to lead the way. Let's hire some of those people that are leaving the federal government. This is an area where I feel really optimistic that he will both pick good senior leadership, but also have an opportunity for sort of that Kennedy-esque, recruitment, ask not what your country can do for you. And maybe I'll say, look, if Zohran hadn't run, let's say, I think I could have beaten Andrew Cuomo, and I believe I would have been a very competent mayor. But I could never have unleashed the level of hopefulness that Zohran's campaign has unleashed into our city. And that is not just an ephemeral thing that's nice for a campaign. I'm desperate for it. You are too. The idea of using that to recruit people to staff these offices, to fill up the agencies, to lead the city well as a kind of New York City patriotism and an answer to Trump. I feel it's a really exciting opportunity for us.
Houlihan, thank you very much. I voted you were number one on my ballot. So I have a lot of confidence in Zohran's intelligence, his flexibility, his genuineness, and I am hoping that he can find a way to undo the Fox machine, which is already.
I can repeat too. I can hear what you're saying.
Already.
That's right. I'll repeat it.
They're already planning campaign ads against him, against Josh Riley, Laura Gillen. I worked so hard for Josh Riley. So I undo that. Get the formula and steal it from them.
Hear, hear. So one thing I will say is that, and you guys all see this, he is a extremely talented communicator of core democratic values and ideas. Lots of people who supported him are not, members of DSA or Democratic Socialists or kind of ideologically on the left. They're people desperate for a more affordable city and open to somebody who's really kind of out there, communicating about it and fighting for it. And I do think he offers one important model for Democrats to communicate more effectively and counter Fox. Now, we need, the country's full of a lot of different kinds of places, and I love that we live in New York City and that what's possible here. People got to run around the country in ways that make sense in their districts, and lots of us in this room have supported candidates. Certainly I have supported candidates, a lot more moderate, Democratic, moderates in districts where that was the choice, was between them and a Republican, and so you go out and you knock doors for them. I will say, and maybe I'll just say it this way, I knocked doors and worked for both Tom Suozzi and Laura Gillen, And I thought it was disgusting that they said that he and we should like find a new party. Like, I mean, I really am offended by that. There's a time for working out our kind of intra-party disagreements and having strong primaries and electing primary candidates. And then we should go out and have each other's backs. They're not going to protect themselves in their election by demonizing other Democrats. So I don't know. I agree with you that we have to find ways to get on offense against this Trump MAGA Fox News thing. But the idea that the best way to do that is to sound more like Republicans, it just makes no sense to me at all.
So first of all, I want to take the opportunity to, I'm Barry Cohen, I'm Mitchell Island Co-op resident of the site. I wanted to take the opportunity to give you a retrospective award for what I thought was best short line of election night addressed to Andrew Cuomo. And it was just 3 words.
Stephen Colbert even put it on the air the next night, which I kind of mortified my mom, but other than that.
Good fucking riddance.
Thank you.
A promise which is still to be realized. But in line with what you've been saying, I wonder if you would talk for a few minutes about the possibility of progressive city administrations and state governments where they exist governing in concert with, in collaboration with progressive citizens movements that are going to be addressing the profound challenges that are not only our localities but our whole country is facing now.
Yeah. This is, so I don't know if you could hear in the back because the mic was on and off, but this was about the possibility here in New York City, but also more broadly, for progressive city and state administrations to govern in partnership with citizen actions, kind of people organizing and mobilizing. Sometimes we call that co-governance or inside-outside. And I just agree so wholeheartedly. For myself, I help bring participatory budgeting to New York City. Most of my work has been done in partnership with different kinds of organizing groups, whether that's like Make the Road, Organizing Immigrants, or groups like the Upper West Side Action Group or Indivisible. So I really agree. Zohran really agrees and has exemplified that. The first big thing that he did as an elected official was help win this debt relief for taxi drivers, which had been demanded by this organization, New York Taxi Workers Alliance, built up over years. And that was a really profound partnership. And obviously, there's lots of different groups that do it. DSA is a place where he's done it. And he's made very clear that, while they're one important partner, there's going to be a lot of need for other organizing. I think that dealing with Trump will be the first big way that we are called on to do it. I mean, we see what's happened in LA and DC and coming to Chicago, and I think unfortunately there is every reason to believe they will be coming to New York City. And those are moments when you need a real partnership. I don't know if you guys saw this, when the Chicago mayor sent the salt trucks out to melt ice, and obviously, it's not that the salt trucks are actually going to stop the federal troops, it's that you are sending a signal, and then Chicagoans responded and came out in great numbers, and that, things, so I think the answer is yes. It's going to be important. It's a thing that he is committed to. Developing good structures to do it is real work, like anything else, and finding ways for different kinds of partners to do that effectively. I guess I gave the example of the good cause eviction protections. That's something that can protect a third of New Yorkers. Nearly 3 million people have those protections and don't know it. we're not gonna have like enough city agency people to go tell them all. And you have to find ways to work together with groups like New York State Tenants Block and Tenants and Neighbors and build those partnerships, and I couldn't agree more. And I know he feels the same way.
So two things. First off, I have the same concern that does he know what he doesn't know, and can he hire people to fill in those gaps? And you seem to think he can. The second thing, I have to give him credit. He did do the work, and he did deserve to win. Not that you didn't work hard, but he did do the work. But the third thing is, and every elected person I run into, I ask the same thing. So I live in an ordinary co-op. I'm not rich. I'm not super affluent. I worked really hard to buy it. And property taxes are killing us. And every single elected, they keep talking about affordability, and they only talk about people who are paying rent. But they don't talk about how the property taxes on our co-ops are a toy, is how I was on my co-op board, I know what went on. And it's just ridiculous, but no one ever talks about helping us stay in our homes. They only talk about rent stabilization and rent, but what about us? What about doing something about property taxes to help all the co-op owners?
Here, here. So this is one area where I'm pleased to say that, and Zohran has said this publicly. So I have been fighting for property tax reform for a long time. The first 2 years of this term, put out a couple of reports. Actually, I brought this kind of coalition of, I got Kevin Riley from the Northeast Bronx, Joe Borelli, the Republican from Staten Island, and Justin Brannon from Bay Ridge, who represents a lot of co-ops. And we went and met with the mayor, who told us that he would build on some work that we brought to him and bring a proposal to Albany for property tax reform. No surprise that never happened, but I talked about this on the campaign trail, and Zohran has said since the primary election that that's one of the things that he is adding to his platform is a commitment to focus on property tax reform, given all the inequities that are in that system. So it's fair to say, okay, that's great. When can I see the proposal? And there's more details to come, but it is something that he has indicated that he sees and hears and is committed to. And maybe I have found him to be like a good listener and somebody who listens and learns. That's not easy to do, especially under the glare that he is under now. I mean, actually, this isn't on co-ops, this is back on issues related to Jewish New Yorkers, but on election night, on primary election night, he made this specific commitment where he said, I know there's a set of people who have concerns here, and what I can promise you is that I am gonna work really hard to reach out and listen and learn and try to understand. And I have just seen him do that since primary day, under the glare of the kind of national spotlight, and at a time when it's not so easy to, they're like drinking a fire hose through a paper straw, to genuinely do that in this area on policy issues, and absolutely in a lot of dialogue with many different kinds of New Yorkers, most certainly including Jewish ones.
Ruth Steinberg, Upper West Side. I hear these wonderful proposals, but how are you going to pay for it? That's the bottom line for me. And okay, you can always say tax the rich, and we should be taxing the people who can afford it more, but this is a very expensive city to run, and it's not terribly efficient, and we really have to have more particulars besides tax the rich.
I think that is all fair. I mean, for some things we can only do them with more resources, and so I'll just use childcare as the best example here. there's this great campaign, New Yorkers United for Childcare, that most of us supported their proposal, broadly speaking, in the primary. The only way that we will be able to significantly expand childcare for families is if there is more revenue coming from the state. The city does not basically have the ability to raise significant new revenue. The only revenue the city can raise on its own is the property taxes, and the property taxes are badly inequitable and just not appropriate to be raised. It is Albany that could raise the corporate tax rate, impose a higher millionaire's tax surcharge, and that has happened a meaningful number of times. Bill de Blasio proposed universal pre-K, got more revenue from Albany to do it. We were facing gaps in the state budget. There was an agreement to add a millionaire's tax surcharge, and I think it's best done just personally when you focus on what you're paying for and show people kind of why that's good and go get it. But there are a lot of the city's budget faces a lot of challenges with the Trump budget cuts to Medicaid. There's reasons to be worried that we're going to have challenges covering the city budget, even leaving aside all the affordability commitments. And it is absolutely necessary to make city government run more efficiently. Those are also things, again, that wasn't, that he talked about during the primary and has talked about even more since the primary. So for example, he's had a couple of meetings with business leaders, and one of them was specifically focused on technology, the kind of tech sector. And they spent a lot of time talking about where is there room to use technology in government more effectively to identify ways to streamline processes and save money in ways that can help in all kinds of ways, that save the city money, that reduce the burdens of regulation on small businesses. This is important. It goes along with Annie's point well. And I think to the extent that, you walk out tonight saying, all right, I'm leaning that direction, but I would like to hear more about, how governance is really going to work. I want to understand ways in which there's a commitment to make government run more efficiently. Actually, I've heard him and his team a few times really make the connection that thinking about governing excellence, like making the city run better, is a highly consistent thing for democratic socialists to do and believe in. I think we kind of think of those as like, on the one side, on the left, are values, and then people that will focus on like making it run better or more Bloombergian. But of course, if you love it, if you care about it, if you want it to be effective, if you want it good at teaching our kids and better at where the garbage is going and able to start moving to renewable energy and get a lot of housing built, all of those things take governing better. They really do. He's committed to that. And I think it's fair to say, it's another thing I'll just bring back to the campaign. I saw a bunch of head nods for let's, see through toward the general election, what ways to communicate that commitment to governing excellence really will be real.
Hello? Oh, good. God, it's working. Hi, Mr. Lander. I have I'm going to preface this because I think a lot of people are going to be like, that's not a big issue, why are you bringing it up? But I'm an animal rights lover. Carriage horses. Four accidents within this last year. I think it was de Blasio, don't quote me on this, that tried to get rid of them, and the union came out strong, saying, just because of a few incidents, you shouldn't get rid of the whole industry. My argument to that is the coal industry, sweatshops. There have been numerous cases where we've gotten rid of stuff because it wasn't right and it wasn't ethical. And so I would like to know what Zohran's position is on eliminating, because the Central Park Conservancy recently came out in favor of getting rid of the horses. And by getting rid of, I mean sending them to a sanctuary.
I'm afraid this is one where I can only tell you my position. I mean, I support banning the carriage horses in Central Park and in New York City more broadly. During the primary, it's funny, this didn't get asked that much. I mean, I've had that position for quite some time. And I was proud to have the League of Humane Voters and some other animal rights endorsements, but it didn't get asked much during the primary, so I don't remember hearing Zohran answer that, and I know a lot of his policies, but kids, I know this one. And then over these last couple awful weeks with those accidents, we're not doing forums, and so I suspect the campaign will be taking a position there. They may already have, but for me, I totally agree with you, and I think we should all keep pushing together to make that happen.
So, the woman who worked on the campaign, that's your name, yeah.
Hi, I'm Lydia. I was very proud to volunteer for you.
Great to see you.
Good to be here. And now I've been knocking doors for Zohran. One thing I've noticed is, unfortunately, Andrew Cuomo doesn't have any positive vision to offer, so he's resorting to, scare tactics because he hasn't changed anything. And I've noticed he's trying to tie Zohran to positions of the DSA, like decriminalizing prostitution and completely eliminating prisons. And these are positions that, Zohran doesn't hold, because one of my criticisms with DSA is that I feel like it's a little too pure, but Zohran knows that he wouldn't have won if everyone who voted for him agreed with him on everything. He won people who had very different opinions from him, but also believed in his campaign. But now I'm wondering, with Cuomo trying to tie him to the DSA's more controversial positions, how do we counteract that? Because I feel like just saying that these aren't Zohran's positions, I feel like there needs to be a little more, not that Zohran has to disprove all of them, but just, is there a more effective way to counter it?
It's a great question, and I think you're really right. He has, been clear that, I think in a sort of a general way, he's got a website up that has the platform that he's running on, and if it's on there, it's part of his platform, and if it's not on there, it's not part of his platform. And then on some specific issues, he has indicated, so for example, on sex work, he's basically said he wants to go back to the de Blasio administration approach on that issue, and he said some things about what that looked like and why he thinks that's better than the approach Eric Adams is taking. I think the challenge here in general is you really don't want to spend that much time, respond. I think what he's trying to do is say, here are the things I'm campaigning on. That's, freeze the rent and make fast and free buses and universal child care and make it a more affordable place. And is trying hard and with the canvassers and in the ads and in the videos to kind of keep that positive vision going rather than getting stuck in a kind of cycle of defense. But yes, and I guess I will say, this is what Cuomo and his $20 million that was spent by his super PAC down the stretch did for the last couple of weeks of the last month of the primary. And Zohran's numbers went up dramatically while it was happening. One thing I have said to a few of these business leaders is if you want to persuade anyone not to tax the rich, you're really not doing a good job by burning your money up on these stupid fear-mongering ads. I think it'd be a better use to pay for childcare. I take the point. I think the best thing people can do is, that's why I love that the canvassers are out there and that you're knocking doors. The more that what we're doing is giving that positive message, I think it contrasts really well to Cuomo's negativity. If he were more had something to say, right? I think what, like an advisor, if you were advising Cuomo, would be like, you should have a positive message, and then let your billionaire friends put the money in an IE and attack Zohran, but he doesn't have a positive vision to put out there. And I do think that he's gotten so kind of negative and dark that I don't think it's helping him. And you know, I think the thing to do is just kind of stay positive. And you know, you're right. You know, broad. I don't know how many people watched or read about the DSA convention in Chicago. It is a very large, you know, wide, broad ideological organization with many people around the country who aren't in cities like New York, where they might have some governing role and have even further out there positions. One thing that has been interesting here in this campaign is to watch the like pragmatic nature of you gotta run if you want to do this. You don't run if you run because you want to run the city. You need to make it effective. You have the budget that you have. If you want it to work and be ambitious and effective, you're going to have to be really disciplined in what commitments you make. You can't do everything, and pretty pragmatic in how you do it. And he has certainly shown that kind of focus and pragmatism.
I don't have your name, but yeah.
Hi, I'm Jackie Ansis. I was wondering if anything was being done to get the Democratic leadership in New York State behind him, and what it is we need to do to make sure that happens.
Yeah, great question. I want to give some extra credit to the couple of the people I mentioned before. I mean, I do think folks like Jerry Nadler and Assemblymember Michael. Actually, let's just give Jerry Nadler kind of a round of applause. And we'll have lots of time to toast him over the next year and change. But what an extraordinary career. Props to him. I mean, I wish he had supported me in the primary, but he supported Scott in the primary. But to quickly recognize that it was time to consolidate behind Zohran, Assemblymember Lasher similarly, and now say Senator Kruger, who are liberals. They're not centrists or moderate. They're liberals, but they're showing what it looks like for party leaders who didn't support someone in the primary, but who recognize you have to play that Big Ten politics. And I think that is hopefully building pressure on the other leaders, on Senator Schumer and Leader Jeffries and Governor Hochul, to come out and support him. And I don't usually call on Democratic leaders to do things. Usually if I have something to say to one of them, you do it in private, but I do think in this case with Donald Trump making clear that Andrew Cuomo is his choice for mayor, it is time for all Democrats and Democratic leaders. And we can, call them, do the things we do to let them know.
Yes. Woman in pink.
So my question would be, given that if he gets elected, we can assume that Trump is going to put a mark on his back. So my question is, does he have a plan to make this city safer for our immigrants, and what to do with ICE? Because I think we are next after Chicago.
Amen. Well, one, thank you for the question. I mean, you know that this is an issue that I feel a lot of personal passion about. I have been back at 26 Federal Plaza every single week since I got arrested. Sadly, I have to tell you that I have watched people be abducted every single time I've been there. So this is critical, both in the what are we going to do to stand up to that, and what's our plan for when federal troops come, and for his efforts to starve us of money, like they stole the $80 million. So yes, all of that is critically important. There is on his website a Trump-proofing NYC, like this is one area he talked about in the primary, has elaborated a little more in the general. One great, ally he gained down the stretch drive of the campaign, who I wouldn't have supported, expected necessarily to be such a strong supporter, and actually it is our great New York State Attorney General, Tish James. And Tish, it's worth remembering, I mean, we love her to death. She ranked Adrienne Adams #1, me #2, and Zohran #3. But as it was clear that he was winning and that was the alternative to Cuomo, she got out there with him, she, helped and supported down the stretch drive, and since then has really been working very closely with him. So I think on these issues, and I will say this is another area where having encouraged the governor to endorse him in the general, I will say, she has shown fortitude in relationship to Trump. I was grateful that she came and bailed me out when I got arrested, and she has been very clear that the relationship she wants with the next mayor will look like what, Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson or Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass have been doing, like very tightly aligned along all of those levels. Oh, and I guess I will add, I said this before, but I think I just want to, it's like a legal strategy, a financial strategy, a logistical strategy, and an organizing strategy. Because on the one hand, we're going to want, like they did in Chicago this weekend, like lots of people out there, like, to the extent that the dividing line is like Donald Trump versus New York City. New York City will win, and so... do it with like discipline and love, and like a non-violent, like you go out in the streets, but like we don't want any conflict, so how do we do that in a way that's just resolutely peaceful? Like what would it look like to say, we're all gonna make sure there's like less crime, and maybe we'll like all like do a lot of extra outdoor dining or something, it's like, oh wait, just like showing, here's what New York City looks like when we're living our values. So I don't know, that's not quite a program for doing it, but I think it is a big team that will include the governor and the attorney general and the mayor and all of us.
So, just to follow up with that, and then the woman who argued in any case, just to reiterate what I mentioned before, there's a network of grassroots groups and other more established organizations that have put together now we've launched, I'm a little part of it, Free NYC, and it's going to be built out. It's going to be built out, and we're going to have a response, and we will have a, Free DC also. We'll be out there. We will be organized. Even if all we have is atoms. When all this comes back down.
My wife made me promise to try harder to make sure there's no more demonstrations where the signs say Free Bradlander, so.
The flyer has the link to that.
So Arlene was saying that there's a campaign being built out already with materials and images around Free NYC. That's not make it more affordable like Zohran Free NYC. That's like free from the clutches of Donald Trump's authoritarian overreach on the model of Free DC, but getting ready in advance, knowing that it's coming. We can put it together though, it's like
we'll all be networked, we'll have resources, we'll know what to do, we'll know where to go.
I really like this. I think it should be like double-sided. It's like one side are the resources against authoritarianism, and then the other side is like the scavenger, free resources for New Yorkers who need them. So.
Color. I'm Zoe. I have noticed that a lot of in-person conversations and a lot of online conversations in the Jewish community, both in this neighborhood and other neighborhoods, I've been hearing a lot of concerning rhetoric of people who are either going to be voting for Cuomo or are going to be abstaining from voting. And that is something that very much concerns me. And I don't quite know, like both how we as, we as Jewish New Yorkers can support Mamdani in these discussions, and how we can do this how we can do this outreach when people aren't necessarily open to listening. This is a lot more eloquent in my head, obviously.
No, you're doing great. Thank you.
All right, there it is. It's a very concerning thing I've been hearing in multiple forums, online, in person, on social media, and I'm a little bit concerned about how that's going to turn out.
Yeah. Thank you, Zoe. And I feel optimistic in some ways, and I share that anxiety in a lot of others. It was Ezra Klein had a piece, I don't know, a couple weeks ago that began like, it's a tense time in the Jewish family group chat. And that's not mostly about Zohran, that's mostly about our own tensions internally. I feel like I could open a family therapy practice for like liberal Zionist parents who taught their kids that everyone was created in God's image, B'Tselem Elohim, and then their kids turned out to be, strong supporters of Palestinian rights, and now they're like have tension. And this has been an agonizing time, the last couple of years in ways that, again, I think, are heartbreaking and challenging in our own really tough issues, and Zohran is a vehicle in many ways for that set of anxieties and debates to play out. He's not saying anything different than lots of young Jews, young Jewish New Yorkers are saying, and it's valuable and healthy and useful to have a hard debate about how people feel about the horrors taking place in Gaza, and have different perspectives on the Israel-Palestine conflict and set of issues, and still to be able, if you're just like a Jewish family, figure out how to love each other across that divide, and if you're a city, to figure out how you could have a mayor who disagrees with you on this issue. And that is proving very challenging. I don't disagree with you. And people feel it very emotionally. I don't think people, for the most part, Andrew Cuomo is being disingenuous, right? Like he's trying to weaponize anti-Semitism for his own narrow political purposes. But lots of more conservative Jews feel the thing they're saying. It's crazy. I don't believe that he is a threat to the safety of Jewish New Yorkers, quite the contrary, but I do see that there are people who have this set of anxieties and feel this way. I guess what I'll say is just a couple more things. In terms of what to say to people. One, I will say again, you could say to them, look, Jerry Nadler and Liz Kruger and Michael Asher and Brad Hoylman Siegel and Mark Levine and Brad Lander are pretty normie Democrats, some more progressive than others. They love New York as a Jewish city. They feel passionately about the well-being and safety of the Jews in New York and the traditions. I joke how it is every mayoral candidate has to give their bagel order and say what's their favorite deli. And I'm I love this as a Jewish city, but our food is not actually that great. I love it, but I don't know why Adrian Adams has to have a favorite Jewish deli. There's so many other places to go. Anyway, so that's a set of people who really care about this and are confident, have the confidence in him as mayor. And that doesn't mean you're going to persuade someone else that they agree with Zohran on Israel, or that they, but that maybe it takes the temperature down a little bit. Mostly what I think here is that it's worth trying, it's worth talking, especially to parents and grandparents. Remember when there was that great schlep back in 2008 when Jews, like young Jews, went down to Florida to try to get their grandparents to vote for Obama? Yeah, so the guy that organized that, Mick Moore, I think is trying to put together like, I think it's tentatively called Menches for Mamdani. And I think there will be some resources that people can use, you know, at the Rosh Hashanah dinner table. Some just to be like, set the record straight, okay, like, you know, he doesn't say globalize the Intifada. In fact, he discourages people from saying it, you know, it's some record straight, setting the record straight, some giving people information and confidence, you know, but this is going to take, you know, this is going to play out over time, way past the election, and I guess maybe I'll just say it this way, like, while it might not be easy this way, I actually think this is got a lot better chance for opening a space up for dialogue within the Jewish community and to get back to dialogue between Jewish communities and Muslim communities who have been so alienated from each other since October 7th. And this may be, you know, kind of not the way the door we planned to go through to try to get back into some better conversation, but it is sure worth trying. So thank you so much for that.
One more question, but I wanted to follow up with, if not now, just today, if not now is a Jewish organization that's been around for like 20, 30 years, organized against the occupation prior to October 7th, talking about the sins of Israel in the occupied West Bank. It's a group of young Jews. I'm not a young Jew, but an older Jew who really supports them and works with them. Today they endorsed Zohran. They're going to be organizing and canvassing for him. And in a few days, JFRIJ, Jews for Racial and Economic Equality, have endorsed honoring Brad and Zohran at their mauzels, and are doing organizing Jews for Zohran, also doing canvassing. So if you want to organize for Zohran with Jewish groups, you can. Okay, so
Yeah, you pay for it. You have to get a pay. Okay, but what I wanted to bring up, what Barry said, I thought was very, and I thought the positive view of New York City to the world that Zohran is presenting and to the country, and when he did scavenger hunts and went out on the internet all over the place. And that's very important. He's using the internet. And we have to recognize that both a good model of the city and I appreciate that you took up. I thought the Democrats had problems because of supporting the genocide, whereas a lot of people didn't vote in favor because of the genocide. So we have to remember that. We want everybody to be voting for what's right and what's helpful in the world. And that's what I thought Zohran stood for. But also, that's why I don't quite understand why I haven't heard more about the model of co-ops, that cooperative activity that Mishalama co-op started and built on. And I think that's a piece of something very important, but also we are in the world of the internet and using that as building on the new world, and that we have to support when he does that, and people should learn to get online if they're not, and find a way to do things online, to say things in favor. I think that will be a big help.
I really agree with that. I think that both the technology point, like we love New York City in real life, and he's good at translating that into viral media content that's good for election purposes and good for showing the best sides of New York to the world. I mean, this goes to what will happen when Trump comes, is like, he'll try on Truth Social to say everything is a hellscape in New York. And, the more not only we can just like show how great New York is, but he has that platform to be showing that to the world, I think will be really important. I hear you on co-ops. I love co-ops. I will convey that back to the campaign that people want to hear about them. Thank you guys so much. This was really a delight to get to do.